Not really. I don't even know where it came from. I still don't know where it came from. I don't know its origin story. I don't know its original application. All I know is it looks AI, but it's not AI. AI is copying Crab Rave. Now I know that. You know? And that's all I've got. It came from the crabs. Got it. It's YouTube lore. Never on YouTube. Yeah, it's like your guys' version of Ken has cheeseburger. Or like, that. Like that. Pally Suck, you live in Palestine currently. Yeah. It's real bad. That we're not into it, obviously, what's going on with Israel. Pretty brutal. You deleted the hydrate option on your stream. You immediately said it's because you just want to be able to drink iced coffee in peace. Okay, let's get into the news. Today we are going to be talking about updates going on with Israel, Iran, and how this is playing out geopolitically on the global stage. I'm also going to leave up the Israeli spy behind PragerU plan as a backup because it does kind of fit along with this. We're going to start out today looking at this. We've got a story coming out of NBC News. UK says an Iran-backed group was behind attacks on Jewish community, bans Revolutionary Guard. Law enforcement officials and intelligence experts say Iran-backed proxy groups are behind a growing number of attacks in Europe, most targeting the Jewish community. Right out of the gate, this does not seem consistent with Iran's version of warfare whatsoever. These are the people who, correct me if I'm wrong, chat, texted people to get them to evacuate an area before bombing them. The idea that they would just be attacking random civilian groups because they're Jewish doesn't seem real. This feels very like false flag. Thank you. I also think false flag. Yes, I'm not the only person who said false flag. It does feel very false flag, you know. So not to be conspiratorial, that's just me, you know, conjecturing wildly, right? But that's my first read, is that this does not seem consistent with other news and information we have coming out about Iran and the way they move, right? So I'm also highly sus, so let's get into it. The scene of an arson attack on 4 Hatzola ambulances in North London in March. And this is from today, July 13th, 2026. And it is a repost from the Associated Press. A series of arson and vandalism attacks on Jewish sites in Britain were the work of a proxy group backed by Iran, the UK government said Monday. Now, chat, because of you sharing with me what's been going on in England, I do know that England has cracked down on Palestinian activism. A number of people have been getting arrested. They've severely imposed freedom of speech regarding talking about Palestinian resistance. So I would not be surprised, certainly, to learn that the UK is doing this to try to justify their very dystopian, draconian crackdown on people advocating for Palestinian survival and resistance, right? Yeah, so Malrish, this was my question as well. Malrish asked this question. Does this article imply the IRGC was previously allowed to operate in England? This is my question. Bans the Revolutionary Guard? Like, was the Revolutionary Guard just running around doing overt operations in England beforehand? Or does it just mean if you're a member of the IRGC, you're not allowed to, like, travel? Like, you don't get travel visas now to England or something like that? I'm not entirely sure. So, let's maybe all of our questions will be answered. Yeah, the UK, well-known operating hotspot of the IRGC. So the government said it is banning the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Right, or IMCR, also known as Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamia. It also banned Iran's powerful paramilitary Revolutionary Guard. But, like, in what context and how? Okay. In a statement, Security Minister Angela Eagle said that the IMCR has claimed 7 attacks in the UK. The group had said online that it was responsible for a string of arson attacks on Jewish sites in London in recent months, including fires at synagogues and Jewish charity ambulances, as well as a Persian language media organization critical of Iran's government. No one was injured in the blazes. Okay, but this is for the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Right. This is not the IRGC. That's a different thing. So let's make sure that we look at this. Sitting behind IMCR were members of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Quds Force, which almost certainly directed IMCR's attack across Europe, she said. Okay, so they just made that. They just inferred that. Quds, or Jerusalem Force, is the Guard's expeditionary unit. It's just like, it does not seem consistent they would just start attacking random like Jewish things. Like, there's not even like an effective form of warfare, right? That's terrorism. It's not warfare. That's a different, I'm not really sure how this makes sense. The group sprang up online earlier this year and has also claimed responsibility for synagogue attacks in Belgium and the Netherlands. Law enforcement officials and intelligence experts say Iran-backed proxy groups are behind a growing number of attacks in Europe, most targeting the Jewish community and Persian language media critical of Iran's Islamic government. They typically work by recruiting members of criminal groups to carry out sabotage and other attacks. Earlier this month, 2 Romanian men were given prison sentences over the stabbing of a journalist from a Persian language television station, an attack the judge said was carried out on behalf of the Iranian state. Like, source needed. I need like a source on this. How are they coming up with this idea that Iran as a country is dictating these things? Oh, Larry, Dave looked into this group. They constantly publish texts with bad translations, like the Arabic is wrong. Yeah, this doesn't feel right. And to carry on what Larry was saying here about the Arabic being wrong, this is something we see a lot from the United States. When the United States will start like propaganda kind of networks or things like that, one of the things that usually people note first is that the translations are bad. Like, they're technically correct, but it's not the way people talk. Or when people speak, and you can hear them speak in videos or radio recording, their accents aren't quite right. Like, maybe they were born in the place that they claim to be from, but then they clearly have lived abroad for a number of years, probably in the United States or whatever. So this is one of the first tells that locals always have when they're like, this is not really us. This sounds like Western propaganda. So things about the translations, things about accents, this is what we usually hear from like false flag operations. Also, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Radio and TV Marti, those types of things. One of the reasons why Cubans on the island immediately knew Radio, TV, and TV Marti were American propaganda is that their accents were wrong. That they were like, this is not how Cuban people talk. These are Cuban Americans. These are Americans. These aren't Cubans. So that kind of stuff does, that is a consistent way to get your spidey senses up, even if it's not a foolproof path to understanding something is real or fake. Seeing those things like bad translations, wording that's not quite used that way, like, okay, maybe technically this is correct, but it's not how people speak, or the accents are off, can be a really good indicator that something weird is happening. So there was no immediate comment from Iran, and the EU in January listed the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization over Tehran's bloody crackdown on protests, which we also know. Obviously, there were real people in Tehran protesting, but also we know those protests were exacerbated, led, incited, and amplified by Mossad and CIA agents. Yeah. Not Ashley Carr says, am I stupid? But like, how would this benefit Iran in any way? It's just a few vans, right? And this is the thing. This is not a military strategy. And in fact, this doesn't make Iran look good or sympathetic. Iran has been able to hold, they're winning this war. And part of what they've been able to do is be on the right side. They are the morally righteous army. So if anything, this looks like a desperate attempt from Western powers to try to paint Iran as being actually not moral. Right, to bring them down to our level, to justify a lot of our kind of more repressive and restrictive actions against people who oppose Israeli expansion in the region. Very, very weird. So obviously we can't say for certain. This is all speculation at this juncture, but it feels weird. I think it feels weird. So let's look at, this is the Islamic movement of the Companions of the Right. 16 minutes ago, they're getting designated as a terrorist. Oh no, the IRGC is getting designated as a terrorist group. Okay. We have a Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. So this is straight up American propaganda for anybody not familiar. Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty is part of something called the USAGM. That is the United States Agency for Global Media. This is U.S. government, part of our website, as it says, an official website of the U.S. government. This is U.S. propaganda, international propaganda. So this would be stuff actually most Americans have never heard, but if you live in another country, you're more likely to hear it. It targets you guys, not Americans. So RFERL, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, is part of that. So it's part of this American propaganda network here. And it reaches more than 47 million people every week around the globe. So it's very, very, very successful. So we're going to read what they have to say about this group from back in April, just as a little bit of backstory. Okay, Miss MM2 has a good link for us. Thank you. We'll take a look at this after as well. So let's do a little deep dive on what's happening. A little-known Islamist group has claimed a string of attacks on Jewish sites and Western financial institutions across Europe since early March. Now, again, this is a straight-up American propaganda network. So what we can take from this is what the U.S. government wants you to think about these people. Calling itself Harakat Ashab al-Yamin al-Islamia, HAYI, Arabic for the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Righteous, the group is believed to have links to Iran. So they're just making this up, that they don't know if this is linked to the Iranian government at all. They're just acting like, yeah, probably, and saying that and publishing that. The working assessment among Western security services is that HAYI is either a construct aligned with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, or an opportunistic network operating within the broader pro-Iranian online ecosystem, a distinction that, for now, investigators have not resolved. Their Telegram channel was established 2 years ago, but remained dormant until March of this year. It only became active and began operating in March, says Kasper Rekowek, a researcher at the International Center for Counterterrorism in The Hague, as he told RFE and RL. Its activation followed the initial U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran on February 28th, after which Europol warned of an elevated risk of attacks in Europe targeting Jewish American-linked sites. Even the timing of that is quite suspicious to me. Right? So suddenly this group got active right after the United States and Israel decided to attack Iran. That seems like very convenient timing for me. Sorry, I just Mitski is our fave. I'm an adult, so I will not be commenting on that on my stream. I'm an adult who didn't know about Crab Rave and doesn't gossip about my political enemies because I'm mature. But I want you to know that I saw that and I appreciated it. Okay. All right, so the group's first confirmed attack was an improvised explosive detonated outside of a synagogue in Belgium on March 9th. And the weeks that followed, they claimed responsibility for attacks in at least 4 countries, an explosion outside a synagogue in Rotterdam, damage to a Jewish school in Amsterdam, an arson targeting Jewish community ambulances in North London, and a foiled bombing outside of a Bank of America branch in Paris. Yeah, see, the thing about this stuff is that these are not military targets. The IRGC was only going after military targets. They were warning civilians in advance when they were going after things near them, telling them to leave. These are not consistent with how we've seen Iran operate. What this is consistent with, however, is the myth of violent anti-Semitist extremism coming from like brown people and Arabs that we have seen the West perpetuate. We've seen the United States, we've seen Europe cling to this idea that the way that anti-Semitism is currently manifesting in our countries is from just like random Muslim brown people, random Arab people, right? And we've not seen that be true. We have not seen that be true. We have seen that really the anti-Semitism that exists is a good old-fashioned neo-Nazi, white supremacist anti-Semitism shit that's popping up all over these places. But no, they want us to believe that there's some mass movement of brown people who hate Jewish people and want them dead or something. And we just haven't seen evidence of that. However, this would be evidence of that claim. So that also feels a little bit convenient. It does not seem consistent with how Iran moves, but it seems consistent with the propaganda stories the West has been putting out to try to justify our uncritical support of Israel, which we use as a vassal state, a proxy state, a military base. Out here in the United States, the reason we have this relationship with Israel is because we use them as a military base. We have an agreement to use their military supplies, their access to it, and just kind of park our own stuff there. They're a giant military base, strategically located, that gives us carte blanche. Yeah, so this is very suspicious, I guess. So locations of attacks suspected to be linked to the pro-Iranian group. This is based on public available reports. Right. British counterterrorism police opened investigations into 2 further incidents in London that they also claimed: an attempted arson outside of a Persian language media organization in Park Royal and a petrol bomb attack on Finchley Reformed Synagogue. None of the attacks caused casualties. All confirmed arrests have involved teenagers or young adults. The primary mode of operation essentially involves bomb attacks or arson attacks against various Jewish or Israeli targets, and now also American ones across Europe, according to Rekowak. It appears they used hired personnel, young people, criminals, hooligans, however you want to call them, in Europe. This is very, I know this is how CIA goes, not our guys. We hire some guys to go do some things, and we're like, we don't know those guys. We have nothing to do with them. So, you know, when you've read enough about these covert operations in the past, it's like this sets off a lot of alarm bells. Again, we can't I can't say I know for certain that this is a false flag by Western powers to justify our support of Israel, but it does seem consistent with things we've seen. French security services foiled the attack on March 28th, arresting 3 minors and 1 adult accused of attempting to plant an explosive device, and investigators found the suspects had been recruited via social media. Reykjavik argued the case points to a layered organization. There's a controller, a multi-layered system, a cell leader who's supposed to carry something out but is being guided. He's on the phone with someone, we still don't know who, and receives materials almost ready for the attack, he said. French Interior Minister Laurent Nunez has suggested the group may have links to Iran, describing a familiar operational pattern. Typically, Iranian intelligence services operate in this way. They use intermediaries, a chain of subcontractors. I mean, the United States does too. That's how the CIA operates. Often ordinary criminals. This is also how the United States operates. To carry out highly targeted actions aimed at American interests, Jewish communities or individuals linked to the Iranian opposition. I've not seen them do anything like this targeting just Jewish communities, but chat, if you've got some info on that, we can look into that more. That's not something I've really seen. The groups claim videos follow a consistent pattern. Sorry, that was worded weird for me. Of short mobile phone footage of each attack branded with their logo, date, and location in Arabic, released almost immediately to Telegram channels affiliated with pro-Iranian Shiite militias in Iraq, and then amplified across other platforms. Yeah, as Mal was just saying, it's not like Israel, whatever, or has ever done terror attacks against Jewish communities to manufacture consent or anything, right? But we have. We know they have. Also, somebody who had the video link earlier to, did somebody have the video link to Israel talking about the Hannibal Directive? We could watch that as a follow-up to this as well. According to ICCT analysis, the same 4 channels to link to Iraqi militias. Which one is Operation Susanna Goes to Hell? Which one is that? Including Asaib al-Haq, which maintains ties to the IRGC Quds Force, and 2 pro-Iranian content aggregators with links to sanctioned pro-Russian networks anchor every dissemination cycle. Same 4 channels. So they're just going like social media channels. Counterterrorism experts have compared the model to Russian hybrid sabotage operations in Europe, in which recruits are contacted online, paid small amounts, and carry out attacks without full knowledge of who's directing them. This is what everybody does. Yet several features of HAYI undercut the image of a professional armed organization. Its logo misspells the Arabic word for Islamic. This is what Larry's talking about, that Dave was looking at. Sorry, their logo misspells the Arabic word for Islamic? What? That feels pretty significant. If their whole thing is that they're Islamic supremacists, wouldn't they? What? Okay. All right. Where can you see it? Let's see. This is not it. These are really connecting neighbors. These are apps. It's this one, right? Here. So, whoever speaks Arabic, go take a look at that. Maybe you can talk to us about it. Well, it was inspired by the crabs. That's why it looks so AI. That's where it's pulling from. Okay. So, its imagery uses a Soviet SVD Dragunov rifle, atypical for Iran-backed groups, which standardly use AK pattern iconography. The administrator's Telegram channel, when contacted by a CBS News, communicated in American-inflected English. Okay. Why is Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty reporting this? They just want to cover their bases. Because they will tell you, out of the U.S. government propaganda sources, some try to look more respectable. Voice of America tries to always look respectable. So does Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. So maybe they're like, we have to throw this in or we'll lose all our credibility or something. But this is so wild. So a guy speaking English with an American accent justified attacks using Christian and Jewish philosophical references with no mention of Islamic doctrine. The group's statements have been issued in English, Arabic, and Hebrew, but not Persian, the primary language of the Iranian state it purportedly serves. No government has publicly established an evidentiary link between them and the Iranian state, and Tehran has not publicly admitted any ties to the group. Vicky Evans, the UK's senior national coordinator for counterterrorism policing, said the group is one of our many lines of inquiry in connection with the April 15th London incident, adding that authorities remain open-minded at this stage. Okay. I think it's pretty safe to say they are not affiliated with the Iranian government. I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, they would spell Islamic correctly and in the right language for their own logo if they were supposedly an Islamic supremacist group. I think that if that was their real focus, they'd know how to spell it, and they do it in the language that they are meant to think is superior to all others. I don't. Okay. All right. So it's just everything's stupid though. Like, we're just like, everything's so ding dong. Sorry, not stupid, ding dong. This stuff works, and here's the thing too that you start to notice. Like, just like when we looked at what they had going on with the Uyghur concentration camps, and you look and you're like, do they think we're fucking stupid? They do. They think we're fucking stupid. And the sad thing is, most people will just read this and be like, okay, yeah, that's what's happening. Yeah, Iran is attacking Jewish ambulances. Like, what? And it's very, very alarming and disturbing how people will take this at face value, right? Yeah, it's very, very racist as well. Yeah, as N7 Rogue Hunter is saying. Yeah. So UK says an Iran-backed group was behind attacks on Jewish community and banned Revolutionary Guard. This is another version of the same story from today. Let's see if we get any interesting information in here. So a series of arson and vandalism attacks on Jewish sites in Britain were the work of a proxy group backed by Iran, the UK government said Monday. So they're just saying that, yes, it was Iran. They're not even putting in any plausible, like, doubt or, like, well, maybe it's not. Okay, yeah. Forgive my ignorance, but do other religions have specific ambulances too? I am not sure. I'm not a good person to ask about that at all. Does anybody else in the chat know? Because I don't know anything about religion. I was raised as an atheist. Yeah, it's very how do you do, fellow Iranians. It's very ridiculous. Wow. So their AP is just like, yeah, it did it. Oh, this is the repost. Actually, the original one we saw from MSNBC came from this AP. So they both just said, yes, they did it. Tehran has long denied orchestrating attacks abroad, despite such cases stretching out over the decades since the 1979 revolution. I bet similar attacks have stretched out since the 1979 revolution. I do not doubt that if they have existed since then, they've been the work of the West. I would not doubt that, right? The 1979 revolution, obviously, for anybody not familiar, in 1953, Iran elected a socialist to be prime minister, Mossadegh. He wanted to nationalize oil. The CIA in the United States and MI6 in England came together to stage a coup and overthrow him. They granted more power to the Shah, the king of Iran, who previously had not had as much political power. He basically operated as a U.S.-backed dictator there. And there was a highly militarized element to it, I guess. But he was a Shah. He wasn't a military leader. And it was so brutal that in 1979, the Iranian people rose up, overthrew the Shah, and expelled the Americans from their country. So the idea that the CIA would want to badmouth them, make this look bad in some capacity, or try to regain control and leverage in Iran, totally not out of the question. So if similar situations have been going on since 1979, who knows? Maybe they're just as sketchy as this one. Maybe they seem just as dubious and not credible as what's going on here. This group hasn't existed until earlier this year. Exactly. Well, remember though, they got the Telegram channel a while ago. They didn't start posting until the United States and Israel declared war on Iran. Then they started posting. So. Okay. All right. Great. Yeah. Cool. IRG, see what they did there. So, all right. The next update we have is not about this potential false flag operation going on. Who knows? We are now instead on this story of Iran attacks 5 Gulf nations, shuts Hormuz after U.S. bombing, all to know. Now, again, this wording, if you just read this and you didn't know what was going on, you're like, they're evil. They're attacking all these random countries. Why? And it reminds me of the Jon Stewart segment where he was like, Iran's just attacking everybody, right? And it's like, well, no, you dingus. They're attacking places that have U.S. military bases that are firing at them. Like, hello. So this wording makes it look like just innocent countries are being attacked, right? No. But that's not what's happening, very obviously. It's because multiple countries have U.S. military bases in them and are attacking Iran. What if we just laid here? Yeah, there you go. That's good. Yeah. Don't go for the curtains. Do not. Yeah, good girl. Okay. We're negotiating. We're learning how to talk to each other, me and Zay. She wants to destroy them so bad. She's like, I hate these curtains. Yeah, they're shooting at innocent, checks notes, U.S. military bases that have shot missiles at them. Exactly, Culty Moose. Yes. Do you want in here or do you want to destroy? Which one do you want? In there? Oh. She's so cute. Yeah, she talks a lot. She's a very talkative creature. She's got a lot of opinions. She ignored that one. I'm so sorry. So this is the same energy going on here. Iran attacks 5 Gulf nations. I wonder why. Shuts Hormuz after U.S. bombing. Iran is doing all these bad things. Wait, I'm sorry. What was the end of that headline? After U.S. bombing. Oh, you could have led with that. U.S. bombs Iran. Right? That could have been the... But whatever, that's not what we led with. Okay. Tehran hits back at several GCC countries following the most intense U.S. bombing since an MOU was signed last month, Memorandum of Understanding. So Iran has mounted attacks on Gulf states and declared the Strait of Hormuz closed after the United States conducted its 3rd round of strikes in a week, and a serious escalation as the ongoing conflict spirals. I really just think this is wild because the order of operations is the United States conducted its 3rd round of strikes against Iran, and then they have responded by firing back and closing the Strait of Hormuz. But that's not how this sounds when you read it. This kind of language is really important. And look, this thing about language, this thing about wording, this thing about order that things are presented in, passive voice, it's not conspiratorial. This is quite literally intentionally created by editorial kind of oversight at certain publications. They will specifically tell their journalists, hey, we don't use this word, we use this word. Don't call these people this, call them this. This is very, very intentional. And also here in the United States, I know our government, our military, our FBI, literally will sit down with major news publishers and tell them exactly what the U.S. government wants to be said. We have documentation of this going back. This is why one of the first things I have people read when they're interested in becoming a socialist, before they even get into theory, is Carl Bernstein on the Media. So you learn about how propaganda works, right? So you break down everything you thought you knew so you can answer with an open mind. Bye, Cummy Jesus. Good luck with your teeth. Tehran on Sunday claimed attacks on Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar, and Oman, calling them its response to renewed U.S. bombings on cities along its southern coast. The wide-scale U.S. strike came after Iran shut the Strait of Hormuz, a critical waterway and one of the biggest flashpoints in the conflict, accusing Washington of violating a memorandum of understanding signed between the two last month. So where's the conflict headed? Iran launched missile and drone strikes targeting U.S. military bases and facilities in several Gulf states. There it is. They weren't just indiscriminately bombing states. They launched missile and drone attacks against U.S. military bases and facilities in other countries. While the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, carried out a 3rd round of strikes targeting radar, missile, and drone sites across southern Iran last week. The U.S. attacks came after Iran opened fire on commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and announced the closure of strategic waterway until further notice, with 1 crew member missing, according to CENTCOM. Iran's powerful parliament speaker and key peace negotiator, Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf. Wait, I thought that they were a dictatorship, though. What do you mean there's other people in the government that are powerful and they have shared collective leadership and responsibility? Yes, as Maurer says, Al Jazeera is generally good, except when it impacts Qatari oil trade. Yep, it's an important thing to remember. So Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf said on Sunday, the era of one-sided deals is over. We told you, keep your word or pay the price. Reality is knocking. Ghalibaf posted on X with an image of Article 5 of the Memorandum of Understanding, which relates to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Receipts. On Wednesday, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the ceasefire with Iran was over. His statement was followed by Iran's Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, pledging to avenge his father's killing. Now, again, Supreme Leader, right? They don't really give the context for that political position. They don't talk about the fact that Iran has this whole elected government, etc., etc. Now, what does it mean for the ceasefire with Iran being over? That means the president technically will have to get approval for this war from Congress now, which means that he must think that he can. Something must have shifted in Congress where he thinks he can pull off approval to fund this war, which is going to be interesting. The fragile memorandum of understanding reached between the U.S. and Iran had several glaring gaps, keeping the door to escalation ajar. The tension spilled over into the Strait of Hormuz again last Monday when Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps struck 3 commercial vessels, including a Qatari liquefied natural gas tanker off the coast of Oman. The next day, the U.S. carried out strikes on Iranian military targets, and Tehran responded with missile and drone attacks on U.S. bases across the Gulf, prompting Trump to call off the ceasefire. The tit-for-tat attacks continued. On Saturday night, the IRGC announced the closure of the Strait of Hormuz until further notice after attacking a container ship using what it called an unapproved route. On Sunday, a second vessel on the strait was hit. CENTCOM said its third round of strikes on Iran last week was holding Iranian forces accountable for the recent attack on a Cyprus-flagged ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Said it hit about 140 military targets that included Iranian missile and drone sites, naval capabilities, ammunition storage facilities, communication networks, and coastal surveillance locations. It added that more than 300 targets were struck over the course of 3 nights throughout the week to degrade Iran's ability to attack civilian mariners and commercial vessels freely transiting the strait. Iran's state broadcaster IRIB said the U.S. launched air attacks on the outskirts of the city of Vasian in the western Loristan province, while another strike hit a military base in Iran's Kondab. Officials from Bushehr on Iran's southern coast told local media that U.S. forces attacked 5 cities in the province, including Asuli, Dir, Bushehr, Dashti, and Tanjistan. Tehran has said the loss of lives and the extent of damage are under review. Right, okay. So, very obvious, as Mallard said, the bias there, right, that we were looking at, and how that will choose them to report. This affects oil. So they're like, oh, look at Iran doing all these bad things. And then you look and you're like, the United States was the first to attack. And this is very rational and common sense. And the United States violated the terms of the ceasefire. So the IRGC claimed a heavy and surprise attack on logistics support centers and refueling platforms used by U.S. aircraft carriers at the port of Duqm in Oman, according to IRIB. The Carl Bernstein, it's not a book, it's an article. And it is... available on Internet Archive. We love to see it. Oh, it is a book. There is a book on it. He originally published this as a series of articles in Rolling Stone, but it looks like there is a full book version. Is that? Oh, no, this is just documents from the... Okay, never mind. Here we go. This is from his website. It's been archived as his work, but it was originally published in 1977. It was a 25,000-word cover story published in Rolling Stone back when Rolling Stone used to still do investigative journalism. And this is a great article about how propaganda works in mainstream news sources. So if we have time, we can look at this a little bit. I'm not sure that we will. I really do recommend everybody read this so you understand how media works, right? The IRGC's public relations office told IRIB the sites were destroyed in the attack. So Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan, how many ships passed through the strait? This is before the war here. And then this is what's been happening since. And we can see this is the leverage Iran has over the world, really. Over the world. Yeah, isn't it crazy? No Names Available 7 says how different they talk about boats passing through Iran's territory in a way that violates the agreements in comparison to Israel attacking boats near Greece. Yep. Mm-hmm. Iran has closed down the strait after firing a warning shot that struck a vessel traveling on an unapproved route. It said on Sunday that it had disabled a second vessel. The strait will remain closed until the end of U.S. interference in the region, the IRGC says. Iranian officials told state media that the U.S. military has been trying to create an illegal route through the Strait of Hormuz, causing insecurity in the area. The narrow yet vital waterway, touted as the artery of global trade, hosting 20% of energy flow, has been at the center of tensions between the U.S. and Iran since the preliminary deal was signed. Tehran has consistently insisted that the only routes approved by Iran shall be taken up during transit through the strait, and it says it is open to managing the strait only with Oman, the other coastal country. So this is their water. This is their territory, right? Oman and Iran. They're the ones who have control over it. So the fact that the West acts so entitled to this is also quite interesting. The U.S. and the GCC countries have rejected Iran's claim on the strait and demanded that navigation be freed of interference of any sort of fees. On Saturday, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi landed in Oman, where the leaders discussed the shipping and management of the Strait of Hormuz, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said. Some countries had sirens blaring on Sunday afternoon, with governments asking residents to stay indoors. Oman said it's taking all necessary measures to deal with the developments to preserve the safety of the country and its residents. The Sultanate of Oman affirmed its condemnation and denunciation of this attack, which came just hours after the country hosted Iran's foreign minister to address security issues in the Strait of Hormuz. Qatar also strongly condemned Iran's attack. Again, these are places they have U.S. military bases in their borders, though, right? Bye, Miss 72. Thank you for joining us and for sharing link as always. Let's see. Qatar also strongly condemned Iran's attacks on its territories as well as in the region, noting that the continuation of these aggressions represents a dangerous escalation that will have complicated efforts aimed at containing tensions, undermining political and diplomatic endeavors aimed at achieving security and stability in the region, and holds the Islamic Republic of Iran fully legally responsible for these aggressions and all of their repercussions and consequences. So that's from Qatar, again, who has U.S. military bases in their borders. All right, so the answer's going on there. The U.S. and our allies are mad that we violated terms of our arrangement with Iran, and they responded exactly the way they told us they would respond if we violated the terms. Surprising. Now, what we got going on here with this next article, pro-Israel lobbying deepens its ties in Europe. I feel like this is going to be especially interesting with all the stuff I know, especially Cara has been sharing with us about how much the UK has been cracking down on Palestinian activism, like even worse than the United States. I know other places in Europe, like Germany, very obviously has very, very strict rules about Palestinian activism. So this is going to be interesting for me as an American to see about how your guys' lobbying works in Europe and what effect that's having on you. So, hello, Avril Cringe. Oh, this story is like a month old, but the author finally got some media attention this week in Germany, and it relates to what we're talking about as well. LNet, a pro-Israel lobbying network, presents itself as fostering dialogue, but has shifted significantly to the right since its creation in 2007. Nowhere is its influence clearer than in Germany, of course. Okay, right. So this is like Germany's IPAC. Right, okay. The youth of the EU are going to be a difficult re-brainwash, Ghost Initial is saying. Yes. So whenever I post about communism online now, it's always Polish people, Czech people, Croatian people, Lithuanian people who are like, no! And they're extremely far right, just like Americans are. It's like talking to Americans. And these are places where fascism has really become like re-embedded in like their everyday. Like even if the governments aren't outright fascist, like just they have a very far right Overton window. Their regular Overton window is very far right like it is here in the US. So I think it is going to be interesting because I made a video about it over the weekend, but like Europe has not fully contended with its Nazi history. And it's done a half-assed half-pass at it, but it hasn't really contended with, because ultimately we know capitalism is very compatible with fascism, right? It's not profitable to fully address and squash your issues with fascism or fascist tendencies. So ultimately it's never fully going to go away there as long as, oh, hi from Poland, hello, Quas 22, just as propagandized as us here in the United States, right? So this is like a very interesting position. I think, I said this in this video, but a lot of Americans think that Europe is so much more progressive than the US. And some places in Europe are more progressive. Some places in Europe have more of a socialist presence, an actual socialist presence. But many places in Europe are like MAGA run style, but for their country. And Americans don't think this because we're like, well, they have free college. And you're like, well, that free college doesn't mean anything. Free college just meant that that's either a holdover from when they had Soviet influence, or it was a bargaining chip that the ruling class made so that people wouldn't revolt and overthrow the government and have a communist revolution. It doesn't mean anything. So yeah, I do think that the youth of Europe is falling very, very far into the same way the youth of the United States is. These right-wing ideas, anti-communist, anti-socialist ideas, they lend themselves more favorably to collaborating with fascist elements around them in society. And that like European liberalism, the Gen Z European liberalism, the Gen Z American liberalism, they're very similar in many ways, right? They have a lot of the same elements at play. Like the big country in East Europe, Argentina, but isn't going to last. I know a Polish guy is very fascist. Yeah, there's a lot of fascist elements. And when you travel through Europe, sometimes you're like, oh shit, oh these are Nazis. Oh, I'm around Nazis. Like you'll notice it sometimes. You're like, oh my god, these are literal fucking Nazis. And as an American, I will say it hits different because we have the Confederates, right? The people who are obsessed with the Confederacy, and it was very, very violent and bad and horrible. Did awful, unspeakable things to black people in the United States. But when we encounter like neo-Nazis, it doesn't hit the same way in the United States. It's kind of like a LARP, right? Because we didn't really have Nazis in our borders like that during World War II. But in Europe, when you encounter neo-Nazis, you're like, oh, this is probably a group that has existed since World War II and probably did help Hitler carry out the Holocaust in this country. And they've just still been functioning. They've been kind of undercover, a little covert, maybe in the shadows, but they're still here. And it hasn't been fully stamped out. And some of the leaders of these organizations actually were whitewashed and put into positions of power as like liberal progressive leaders in some cases of government roles. So it's a very different thing as an American. And I find it very, very interesting. And I think a lot of Americans aren't aware of it, that you guys in Europe have your own issues with fascism just like we do. And I think a lot of liberals think like, oh, like our fascist elements are inspired by the United States. But I don't think that's true. I think that our countries are developing fascism as a reaction to the failures of capitalism, right? The way that Mussolini wrote that it would. That's the role that fascists take. They step in at these moments. So the CIA literally paid them to be terrorists against Soviets. I mean, that too, right? But we did that at home as well. So we have that as well. Like we have these things, if you're not from the United States, we have these orgs here, these groups that are, I've talked about this a couple times, but probably not as broadly. I probably just talked about it in reference to Ukraine. But basically we have these organizations that are here that are like ethnic minority councils. And after World War II, this is when we went into these areas that had massive Nazi collaboration, and we saw people with organizing potential, leadership potential, and we plucked them from these communities. These people who had collaborated with Nazis in their country, we brought them to the United States. We kind of cleared their past, and we've set them up in these like ethnic minority councils in the USA. And those were mostly Nazis. Not all Nazis, but a lot of Nazis, mostly Nazis here as well. And we gave them basically government influence and government jobs to help spread anti-communist ideology here at home. So we did that here too, in a lot of ways, right? Maybe not explicitly fighting, like, but we've armed fascists and given them power at home certainly as well. But I think there is something to be said that there is a group of capitalists who are smart enough to recognize capitalism can't last forever. And so their default that they go to now is fascism. And that I think can happen organically in any country, right? So Nazis were literally inspired by the U.S., as we pointed out many times. The U.S. absolutely has Nazi elements that have been around as long as in Europe. Yeah. I guess my thought is just that, if you've got a country, they're capable of developing this element within their borders. And just because it's in Europe doesn't mean that they're not going to have these far-right fascist elements. And yeah, the Nazis did learn from the United States, especially when it came to how to enact ethnic cleansing on a mass scale, right? But for example, I've seen people be like, oh, in Germany, they're copying Trump. And I'm like, no offense, but I don't think Germany needs to copy Trump to have its own reemergence of right-wing fascist elements, right? They have their own history that they can reference and hearken. And this is a very in a way that the international bourgeoisie is international, right? They're all learning from each other all the time. But I think that for a lot of Americans, we think like our Americanism, first of all, we think that our Americanism is fine, but Trump is the problem, and also Trump is making the rest of the world fascist. And it's like, well, no. I mean, our Americanness is our Americanness even if Kamala Harris had won. And our far-right tendencies certainly do influence the rest of the world, but there are people with far-right tendencies in other countries in the world as well, because for lots of people, this is their like death rattle last grip on capitalism. This is how they think they can save capitalism. So, pitting fascism on one person is a huge problem, right? I think it's like, okay, Mauer says, I feel like most of fascism is just the result of politics of negation taken to extreme. It's always going to arrive, and that's why it's fundamentally anti-communist. Yes. I think that's what it is. Capitalism, okay, is by any means necessary. Yes, capitalists will unleash fascism to try to protect their ill-gotten gain. Yeah, exactly. And that's really what it comes down to. So this idea that it's just one man bad, Donald Trump, and now Donald Trump is turning all these perfectly progressive utopias in Europe suddenly right-wing too. It's like, well, I think it's like a short-sighted and facile understanding of how the far right develops all around the world, right? Same for the Korean War. South Korea is basically the collaborators who served the Japanese occupiers. Yes, the people who are in the South Korean government, yes. But I will say, the South Korean people, the average everyday people, they fought back against the landlord class who collaborated with the Japanese, and then later with the United States. They fought back a lot, and that's why the United States slaughtered so many of them. So yeah. Yes. So, I don't know. Just very interesting to think about. Yes, Caltimo says, surely just one man is a problem. This outcome that keeps happening isn't systemic. Yeah, I think that's really the point. Yeah, and I'm just trying to remind people, this is systemic. This can happen anywhere. This is not a Donald Trump thing. This is not Europe's copying our papers necessarily. It's that the international bourgeoisie has the same goals and interests, and fascism is appealing to them, right, for the same reasons, and they do work together, and they do learn from each other, certainly, but it's not like the cause and effect is capitalism cannot last. Rich guys want to stay rich. So, yeah. Oh, Rob, 135 stream streak. Woo, love it. Yeah. Tuesday Blue, there's more nuance to it. Unfortunately, people don't want to face that. They'd rather just blame one person than address an ideology, right? Or a historical tendency or historical pattern that we can see when we look through history. All right. So getting into this. Talking about how this is manifesting in Europe and in particular Germany. On May 8th, 2014, 7 men met in an office a stone's throw from the Bundestag in Berlin. There were 3 Americans, 3 Germans, and 1 Israeli. Renan Elias, co-founder and at the time director of the European Leadership Network, ELNAT, set up to build relations between key European countries and Israel. Elias, a red-headed, boyish amateur poet, grew up in one of the first settlements in the West Bank, and his background included working with AIPAC. Yeah. American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Okay, so the leading pro-Israel lobbying organization in the U.S. and with the Israeli Prime Minister's office. So again, it's like, look, does this mean that, we see that they're copying, the international bourgeoisie is international, right? These are people who are able to hop on a plane and go to another country and do the exact same thing, and they're all working together. It is true, though, that these are proxy states of the United States because we have the most power. They are learning from IPAC. So, I think it's just the relationship is very interesting, but it's not like there weren't far-right tendencies happening in Europe, because the owning class of Europe, the owning class of the United States, their borders are not firm with each other. I guess that's the main point that I want to hammer home. It's like, he's like, when we think about Ukraine, it's like when we talk about Kolomoisky and how David was getting mad at me on the podcast because he's like, you can't just call him an Israeli billionaire. He's an Israeli-Ukrainian billionaire, and that's important. And unfortunately, David was correct, and I hate it when David is correct, right? But it's true, and it's because, the borders mean less when you've got a private jet and multiple passports, and you're making money from transnational companies, right, that you own or have huge stakes in. It's all international. According to the meeting's minutes, Elias underlined the positive aspects of an international cross-linked system of associations with one aim, highlighting that there was not yet an entity in the world of German-Israeli friendship that worked specifically to involve decision makers. The purpose of the meeting that day was to remedy that by officially launching LNet's German chapter. The idea behind LNet's creation in 2007 was to replicate American methods of pro-Israel lobbying in Europe. AIPAC had managed to make support for Israel politically rewarding and costly to oppose by coordinating substantial donations to political candidates and running aggressive media campaigns. But Europe, where the Jewish community was much smaller and politicians less reliant on donations, was not yet prepared for this type of political maneuvering. To overcome this, LNet cultivated wealthy Europeans sympathetic to Israel and encouraged them to participate in political spending campaigns on the AIPAC model, while developing other forms of influence such as all expenses paid trips to Israel for politicians. Today, LNet employs dozens of staff and has 6 European offices: Paris, Berlin, Brussels, London, Warsaw, and Rome, as well as its head office in Tel Aviv and a branch in New York registered as Friends of LNet. Where do I read? Oh, it's only by subscribers. Okay. Let's go to archive.ph. We'll look for a few more minutes at this. But again, it's like, okay, so for this to work, they're running on an American model. Yes, just like the Nazis looked at what the United States was doing and they were like, we could do that. But they already have their own politically motivated, wealthy Europeans sympathetic to Israel. They already have their own bourgeoisie there who's sympathetic to the political and militaristic aims of Israel that is available to be encouraged to participate in political spending campaigns. So that's the kind of like relationship stuff that I think a lot of Americans aren't aware of. They might read that article and be like, the U.S. is doing this to them. And it's like, well, yes, like the U.S. has an influence there, but there's already a base of a bunch of rich people in Europe who have these same interests and goals, right? So, I don't know, very hydrate or digest. Oh my God. It's not like they're not inventing it out of nowhere because the bourgeoisie is international. There are also people there who it is in their best interest for Israel to succeed because they are the owning class there, whatever. Nearly all European leaders are pro-Israel. Some aren't rhetorically, but still support them materially. Exactly. Hello. Oh, no, we can't read any more than that. It won't let us. Well, that's okay. That's a pretty good short little intro for us. It's 11:34 anyway. Let's take a look at this PragerU thing really fast. We'll do an overview, and then we'll get into MAP for the rest of the day. PragerU, meanwhile, is trying to take over American schools. This right-wing pseudo-educational group is now an official educational partner in at least 10 states and blitzes children with highly questionable messaging on race, history, and politics. I think, too, one of the things I tell, this is like really what I tell people in Europe. Like, this is like what you see happening in the United States is not a Donald Trump specific thing. It happened under Democrats as well. And it's not an America specific thing, USA specific thing. It's capitalism. It's late stage capitalism. And the United States, in many ways, is the testing ground for what will happen to your countries. Like if you're in Europe, I'm sure you guys have seen a lot more moves to privatize your healthcare, do things more on an American model. And that's really, we're like the guinea pigs for the global capitalist class, for the global international bourgeoisie. They tested on Americans and they're like, well, let's see what we can get away with back home, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Is this Alan McLeod too? He's so good. I love him. Even more concerning, PragerU was led by a former Israeli spy, Marissa Streit, who has stated she uses the tactics and techniques honed by IDF military intelligence on the American people. Streit's company is involved in big money operation targeting children with neoconservative, pro-war, pro-business, pro-Israel messaging, attempting to indoctrinate them at their youngest and most impressionable age. Mint Press explores this increasingly powerful group with ambitions to completely overhaul the American educational system. You have probably seen a PragerU video. An estimated 1 in 3 Americans have. The billionaire-funded media machine is a powerful force on the American right, providing highly produced conservative content attempting to push U.S. politics and society rightwards. Recently, however, PragerU has set its sight on children and is seeking to hijack the American education system. Since 2023, it has signed deals with 10 states: Alaska, Arizona, Florida, Idaho, Louisiana, Montana, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, and Utah, to become an official education provider, supplying books, videos, and other content to schools across the United States. Students in New Hampshire, meanwhile, can earn credits by completing online PragerU courses, and with PragerU Espanol, it has plans to expand into Latin America as well. Florida was the trailblazer in this phenomenon. Florida also, you might remember, is currently doing Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. teaching anti-communist classes as well. As part of his Stop Woke Act, such a joke, a bill that sought to eradicate liberal ideology from public life, Governor Ron DeSantis partners with the organization, identifying it as one that aligns with the state's revised civics and government standards. PragerU now provides ultra-conservative American values messaging for kids aged K through 12. Florida's Post-Stop Woke Act curriculum now requires middle school teachers to instruct students on the benefits of slavery for Black Americans, including that slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit. This is how we were taught. This is how I was taught about slavery in school in California as a 39-year-old. 40 next month. It is also rewritten the 1920 Ocoee massacre, a pogrom that saw a white mob kill dozens of Black residents and permanently ethnically cleanse the Florida town of its Black population as an act of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans. College students, so it's as an act of violence perpetrated against and by African, so they're saying it was black on black crime. That's how they're rewriting that. That's absolutely wild. College students at Southeastern University in Lakeland, Florida, meanwhile, can earn extra credit by taking a PragerU history course. This despite the fact that, despite its branding, PragerU is not an accredited educational institution, let alone a university. Oklahoma, however, has gone even further. Last year, the state superintendent of education, Ryan Walters, launched a controversial teacher evaluation test developed by PragerU to vet teachers for their ideology and filter out applicants considered insufficiently conservative. The plan even withheld teaching certificates from educators from what Walters described as woke states. Walters left his position to head the Teacher Freedom Alliance, a conservative pressure group opposed to teachers' unions. Of course. The PragerU content being shown to American school children contains a number of highly controversial viewpoints presented as common sense. Most lessons are presented in cartoon format, with one about the founding of America, including an animated Christopher Columbus stating that slavery was no big deal. Slavery is as old as time, and it's taken place in every corner of the world, he said. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed. No, I don't see the problem. So fucking sorry. This is like such a parody of Americana. How do you know if your state is woke or not? Good question. I know my state's woke. Yeah. California, we never stood a chance. Vermont, woke state. Woke state. Oregon, woke state. Minneapolis, woke state. These are the woke states. Does PragerU have any actual reach in U.S. schools by any means necessary? That's what they're talking about. These schools are actually doing deals with them now. Yeah, so your school can give you PragerU courses in class. All 10 of these states, U.S. states, have done deals to get PragerU actually educating in their schools. Wisconsin. Chad, is Wisconsin woke? I don't know. Massachusetts could go up. Massachusetts is kind of dark woke, you know? All of New England actually is woke, though, I think. Yeah. Yeah, communist California, land of the real estate industry, home of white people calling the cops and their homeless neighbors. Yeah. Exactly. Everybody's homeless. We're woke. Yeah. New Mexico. I don't know if New Mexico... I wouldn't call New Mexico a woke state, personally. Look, I'm just telling you. The wokest place in the USA is New England. It's crazy over there. You go there and you're like, what? This is what they think California is, but it's not. Yeah. So they got that energy going on over there. This is absolutely wild, though. So, further justifying the enslavement and genocide of two continents, Columbus tells those watching that the place I discovered was beautiful, but it wasn't exactly a paradise of civilization, and the native people were far from peaceful. Wild. Also, that it points out, this is just a return to how things used to be here. This is how we were taught about slavery and colonization when I was a kid. So, while this is horrifying and bad and wrong, very obviously, it's just like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of energy, if that makes sense. It's not out of nowhere. There are more counter-protesters supporting the latest ICE murder in Maine than you've seen anywhere. Very interesting. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, Northern Cali is very, very, very conservative. Yeah. And I will say the rest of California, a lot of California is very conservative. They're liberals, but they're like diehard liberals. They're like very like pro-war, pro-imperialism, whatever. Bomb them for their freedom kind of vibes. Yeah, Oregon, literal KKK state. Yeah, Oregon's pretty bad as well. Another video lesson grossly distorts the views of abolitionist Frederick Douglass, with an animated Douglass justifying slavery in America, saying the founding fathers made a compromise supporting slavery to achieve something great, the making of the United States. Yeah, this is how we were taught about the shit growing up. PragerU kids videos also cover more contemporary issues. One video titled Los Angeles, Mateo Backs the Blue deals with the murder of George Floyd, whom the narrator describes as a black man who resisted arrest. Video claims violent protests and looting were sparked by false claims of racist policing spread by unnamed activists. Mateo, a Los Angeles child, is aghast by protesters threatening police, or as the video calls them, protectors, and decides to stand firmly in solidarity with the Blue Lives Matter movement. Yeah, this is the kind of shit that used to happen in my school, and this is why I would get kicked out of classes all the time, because I would just yell at teachers about this when I was a little kid. Another educational resource approved for use in schools is a lecture called Is Fascism Right or Left? By the controversial conspiracist Dinesh D'Souza, in which he insists that fascism bears a deep kinship to the ideology of today's left for horseshoe theory. In 2014, D'Souza pled guilty for violating federal campaign financing laws. Okay, great. Unsurprisingly, for a conservative movement funded by fracking billionaires, PragerU also instructs children to reject the overwhelming consensus on climate change. However, it takes it to absurd levels, comparing the supposed oppression of climate skeptics to the living in Warsaw ghetto, where upwards of 300,000 Jewish people were killed by Nazis. Okay. In Poland, Anya's energy crisis, the titular character is fed propaganda at school about the disastrous impact of human-made climate change, only to have her eyes opened by her conservative parents. Anya is ostracized by the other children for merely expressing her concerns. Luckily, her grandfather Jacob gives her the strength to continue by telling her about the Warsaw Uprising. Through her family's stories, Anya is realizing that fighting oppression is risky, and it always takes courage, viewers are told. Wait, fighting against climate change? Who are you fighting against? Greta Thunberg? Like, you're going to hunt Greta Thunberg down and go, like, exchange fisticuffs with her? Like, what is the oppressive force of people trying to stop climate change? This is wild. Famed 2020 election denier. Interesting. I didn't know about him. On India, American children are told that the country benefited greatly from British imperialism, who spread the influence of Christianity and Western values through India and discouraged or even outlawed harmful traditions, and gave India its independence in 1947. Western influence helped transform the country in many positive ways, but some ancient customs are harder to change than others. The video concludes, framing India's problems as entirely their own down to their backward culture, rather than to centuries of direct rule and oppression. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very, very cool. But this is, okay, so this is also what I mean when speaking about, like, you know, these countries have their own tendencies to move in these ways. Like, yes, like, England also has done many horrible, horrible things on their own, not with American influence, or they didn't have to copy our paper necessarily in England, right? So we are, the rich are copying each other's papers all the time. They're working together all the time. But yeah, just again, like, Europe also deals with these things, and they deal with these things in sometimes uniquely European ways that a lot of people aren't fully up to speed on here in the US. Right. Another video lambasts Canada's free healthcare system and highlights the supposed dangers of socialized medicine while extolling the for-profit privatized American system despite it being by far the most expensive comparatively and having the worst outcomes of any developed nation, according to international studies. True. This is so crazy. PragerU also sets its targets on Cuba, China, Venezuela, and North Korea as well, publishing videos demonizing those countries as authoritarian nightmare regimes in need of U.S. intervention. Duh, of course. And again, here in the United States, liberals think that Donald Trump loves North Korea or something, which is absolutely psychotic. In the Epstein files, they casually talked about Donald Trump being open to regime change in North Korea. Netanyahu's favorite channel. So no nation, however, concerns PragerU as much as Israel. The organization has dedicated a huge amount of time and resources to defending and promoting the country. Their Israel at War series of lectures denounces the lie that Israel is occupying its neighbors and includes a link to sign a petition to condemn Hamas and stand with Israel. Lesson plan designed for young children. Shut up. This is like so fucking embarrassingly American. Shows teachers how they can make a model iron dome out of juice boxes and straws. This country's so embarrassing. It's so fucking embarrassing. It's like a joke. It's like a joke. It's like if you invented a joke country. But it's like real. And then these people will get on the internet and tell you, you don't know anything. Communism bad. have you read Animal Farm? They won't even ask if you have. They're like, you need to. You need to read it. Yeah, this is a fucking joke of a shit show of a country. But again, we are not the only ones. There are many joke shit show countries in the world. We just happen to be the most powerful right now of the joke shit show countries. We're the head joke shit show country at the moment. You know? We're the ones really calling the shots. We got the BDE out of all the joke shit show countries, currently speaking. Wild. Alright. PragerU, run by an Israeli spy, etc. Make America dumb again. Okay. Yes, I was in 7th grade once. I have indeed read Animal Farm. Yeah, this is what I keep telling you. I'm like, I was a child. We read it. Yes, I have also been a child. Straight has been a PragerU since its inception in 2009. Her views on politics in Israel and Palestine, however, could almost be described as moderate compared with the company founder, Dennis Prager. The right-wing talk show host has visited Israel dozens of times, including leading a Stand With Israel tour across the country, including into occupied East Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. He labeled Palestinians as among the world's most morally unimpressive national groups, and claimed that lying is a Palestinian art form. So this is, remember, Pallywood? This is what I'm trying to tell people. You guys remember this, right? That Israel said that everybody in Palestine was lying about bad things happening to them, and they were actors, and they were great actors, and they made sets and scripts and made movies. So all the videos you saw on your phone of the genocide, that was Pallywood. They were acting. They're so good at lying in Palestine. They just made all that up. That's literally what they believe there in Israel. It's absolutely wild. So the empire he built was bankrolled to the tune of millions of dollars by fracking billionaires. They later pulled their money after Prager was insufficiently homophobic for their liking. Okay. Prager campaigned for white people to be able to use the N-word. Also, he fell in his bathroom in 2024 and was left quadriplegic and paralyzed from the neck down, and has since taken a backseat in the organization. Oh, maybe karma is real. By 2024, PragerU's revenue climbed to a reported $70 million, and it could afford to hire A-list conservatives such as Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nigel Farage, and Douglas Murray to present their videos. Actually, I take back the karma is real, because that is really, really fucked up to other people who happen to be quadriplegic or paralyzed. That is not, like, your life is not a curse that the man from PragerU should be subjected to. That was me being flippant and not thinking through what I said, so I walked that one back. The sort of callous relationship with the truth has been a constant feature of the organization. It's regularly criticized for producing content with little to no intellectual merit. Multiple sources have cataloged what they call the blatant lies presented in the outlet's videos. Officially, PragerU is a non-political organization. We're a 501c3 nonprofit company, co-founder Alan Estrin said. We don't have any political involvement with anybody. That would be against our character. Racist Sesame Street. PragerU sits at the apex between neoconservative foreign policy, reactionary social policy at home, and relentless pro-Israel advocacy. Large majorities of Americans support a system of socialized medicine that PragerU so actively campaigns against, as well as making colleges free to attend and building social housing nationwide. 62% of young Americans hold a favorable view of socialism. Polls show the country overwhelmingly disapproves of Trump's aggression against Iran, and after nearly 3 years of genocide, the tide is turning on Israel. An April Pew Research Center study found 4 in 10 Republicans hold an unfavorable view of the country. That figure rises to 57% of Republicans under the age of 50. Top right-wing media figures such as Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes are all vehemently anti-Israel. Meanwhile, pro-Israel conservative thought leaders such as PragerU's Ben Shapiro have seen their audience crater by up to 90%. All right, very, very fascinating. And it is by our guy, Alan McLeod. So, what does all of this mean? Well, the propaganda machines are working overtime all the time, and we need to remember that. And the same propaganda machines that are stressed out about American youth having a favorable view of communism are the same ones teaching you things in school to try to turn all your kids into neoconservative brain rot ding-dong zombies. And they're also potentially the same people trying to sell us that a group of Islamic extremists who don't even know how to spell words properly in Arabic and aren't even speaking the right language coming from their country, and whose leaders speak English with American accents, are actually affiliated with the Iranian government and working on behest of them. These are all the same thread. So the general thread of today, when we look at all of these stories, is how propaganda attempts to influence foreign policy and make us believe things about the world that are not true. Right now, we are in a propaganda war, right? The literacy crisis, they won. They made people ding dong. So then the question is, how do you break through to people during a literacy crisis to teach them the truth about things? And it's hard, right? Ghost in the Cell has a related video we'll watch before we move into map segment for a few. Hold, please. Let's take a look. Oh, they blocked me. They have blocked me. I can't watch it. I'm blocked. Yeah, that happens. That happens. You know? Yeah, you got to indoctrinate them young. I marked safe, I guess. I don't know what that was. Okay, should we move into map, everybody? Open incognito. Oh, yeah, we can do that. Let's see. Hold on. We can do that. Let's go in incognito mode. I don't know if it lets you view when you're not logged in on TikTok is the only thing.
When I'm working on files with my son and he gets annoyed and doesn't want to do it, I just remind him that they're not going to teach him in school because the government wants him to be stupid. And then he goes, they want me to be stupid so I can be evil. Okay, fine. And he locks in. Yeah, that's what you gotta do.
Yeah, okay, well, this person hates me, just so you guys know. They really don't like me. They're not a fan. But that is a funny video, and that is good. Over the weekend, I was with my New York partner's family, and there was one of the people there, like, one of the aunts has kids who are, one of them was 10, and I was talking to him for a little bit, the 10-year-old, and he was like, oh, yeah, like, you can tell the kids who've just been, like, on iPads since birth, they're like brain rotted. And that was the term he used. He's like, they're brain rot kids. We call them the brain rot kids. They're like, they don't work. Like they're not normal kids. And he said that it's actually made him want to go do sports more and be outside more away from screens, just seeing his peers get like super, like brain rot kids. Yeah. He's like, I don't want to be like them. I'm not like them, right? Like he'll ask his mom, like, I'm not like them, right? I'm not like them. I'm different. And I thought something was really interesting. Like when I was growing up, the stereotype was that jocks were always idiots because all they cared about was sports, right? Now, though, for like kids his age, I'm like, the jocks are probably the smartest kids because they didn't grow up super propagandized on iPads. They were out touching grass. They were using more problem solving skills probably than those kids were who were just scrolling YouTube all day since childhood. So I'm like, oh, the jocks are now going to be probably the more practiced, right, at problem solving skills and like actually engaging with comprehension and like things like that, critical thinking, than these kids who grew up just like on iPads all day, which is very, very interesting. Yeah, they're also victims of the literacy crisis. Exactly. It was really sad though. It was really interesting listening to him talk. And he's like, all I care about is that I'm not like them. And he talks about how he like intentionally tries to read books and stuff outside of school because he sees them and he's so like, oh, like that's weird, you know? And I'm like, that's very interesting. Like he like sees it in his own peer group, right? And one of the things I was looking at too recently is that there's like, you know, test scores are getting worse. I tweeted about this, so I'll show you guys the data that I shared on Twitter. But test scores are getting way, way worse for comprehension. Let's see if I can find those really fast. Because there's an interesting component of it, though, that we can discuss really fast before we move into map. We can run a few minutes late today since I ran late. Hold on, searching on my own Twitter. Wow, I tweet a lot when I have Twitter access, you guys. I'm on there. I'm really on there, like all the time. Okay. So here we go. So in reading, the average test score in 2024 was the lowest score in the history of this assessment for some standardized tests. And again, standardized tests, they come with their own problems. They're very racist. They're white kids do better on them. You know, they're a huge predictor of your income level and your ethnicity, like more than anything else. But it is the only marker we currently have. So it's the closest thing we have to really get this going, you know. So 32% of high school seniors scored below basic, meaning they were not able to find details in a text to help them understand its meaning. Like, my thing about standardized testing has always been that standardized testing should just be offered in a variety of languages, right? And that, like, we do need some metrics to test to kids, but the way we're doing it now is, like, not working. But this is, again, the closest we have to it. In math, the average score in 2024 was the lowest since 2005. So in reading, it was the lowest ever for kids since 1992 when they started testing. So reading comprehension is at an all-time low, like all-time low. Math was the lowest since 2005 when the assessment framework changed significantly. On the test, 45% of school seniors scored below basic achievement, the highest percentage since 2005. Only 33% of high school seniors were considered academically prepared for college-level math courses, a decline from 37% in 2019. So 32%, so 1/3 of high school kids today are below basic in their reading comprehension, right, in their reading skills. And so this is National Assessment of Educational Progress, right? This is a percent of 12th grade students who scored at least basic on testing. So this is a visualization of what they're talking about here. Right? So this was kind of the peak, and then everything went down. COVID obviously affected it, but it was already going down before then. And here is grade 8 as an example. This is the pandemic lockdown period, right? When schools were adversely affected, but look at just how much it's gone down here. Like, this is compared to 2003. So this is the year I graduated high school, for reference point. So this is where the average for people who graduated high school when I did, this is 2003. And this is where it is today. So when we say, like, we noticed it, like, if you're a millennial, you super notice it, right? One of the things that's interesting, though, that's not shown on this graph is that what's happening is some kids are still getting it, right? So it's creating this massive gap. So some kids are testing normal and fine, and then a lot of people are getting left behind. So I had just seen those statistics, and then when I was talking to this 10-year-old kid, he's like, oh yeah, those are the brain rot kids. I'm like, oh, it really is a core group of kids probably that are, like, really tanking it, and then the kids who aren't subjected to the brain rot, whatever the conditions of brain rot are, right, they are still performing normal. So I just thought that was interesting. And I guess what was the major DOE push right before that? Oh, like in 2013, 2014? That's a good question. It was Obama era, right? Oh, let's look at 2013. So the thing that came up first here is the fact sheet President Obama's plan for early education for all Americans. Providing high-quality preschool, growing the supply of effective learning. Well, this didn't work. Whatever this was. Whatever the fuck this was. Common Core? What's Common Core? I don't remember Common Core. What is that? What is that? California initiatives. Does chat know about Common Core? As like No Child Left Behind? Common Core standards. I'm going to look up the Wikipedia on it really fast before we get into math, the fun math. You had Common Core. Okay. Began in 2010 with the goal of increasing consistency across state standards, or what K through 12 students in the United States should know as English, language, arts, and mathematics. It's like a new rubric. Interesting. In late 2008, the MGA convened a group to work on the developing of the standards. They're copyrighted. Adoption, 46 states adopted this. Texas, Virginia, Alaska, Nebraska did not. The Every Student Succeeds Act was passed in December 2015, replacing No Child Left Behind, but then everything got worse after that even. But it was still starting to do bad before then. Other content area adopted a national approach. Next Generation Science Standards released in April 2012. Yeah, so whatever happened here got worse. I've never heard of Common Core either. Virgo and I are both in California, maybe a little older. Yeah, because I was class of 2003. I graduated 2003. Your AP Poli-Sci teacher constantly hating on Common Core. You teach in California. Does this still exist out here? Do we do this? Sorry. We're old. I was officially adopted in 2016. You couldn't understand why they're doing math that way. Interesting. You graduated high school in 2018. Hey, I'm ready to be 40. I'm ready for my 40s. It's going to be the best era yet. You graduated 2016. It was relatively new. Okay. So this is it. Whatever this thing is probably what tanked it for people. The analysis of why No Child Left Behind failed. Penalized schools for failing to fix societal issues like poverty. No shit. Oh my god. Wow. Is the Valley Girl accent still the Valley Girl accent? What do you mean? What do you mean? Ah! You graduated in 1998. What's up? You would have been my cool older friend. You would have been like we would have been going to shows and I'd be like, that's the cool kid, you know? Common Core. Okay, wow. It is a rabbit hole, but yeah, whatever that is. So very interesting. So the kids are getting pumped full of indoctrination. They're getting more and more ding dong. And also I think that's why so many of them, like, again, not to be rude, but when you see the left comms reading a sentence to you and you're like, that is not what that sentence says. They're like, it does. Haha, you fucking idiot. You're like, you are actually illiterate. Like, it's a basis for it. And it's very challenging. And like, for me, I spent a long time being like, it doesn't matter that I performed well in school academically. It's so much bias and bigotry goes into these testings, these standards, right? It doesn't matter. It's not an indicator of intelligence. But now I do feel that I've had to walk back a little bit of that because your government does have an obligation to educate you. You should be functionally literate, right? And there is a political motivation in trying not to make these kids literate, to try, and it makes it easier to shove shit down their throat like these fucking weird PragerU classes that are telling them people liked slavery and it was actually not that bad. Like, this shit's crazy. It's wild. Sorry. You know, before long, our revolution will have to do the Cuba thing of having literate people live with them to teach them. Yeah. And like, literacy is important. And like, yes, there are natural limitations to how much many of us can learn. We all learn in different ways. We have different things we can do and we can't do. But like, basic functional literacy, most people should be able to achieve, especially if we are putting money into a public education system. Right? There should be some baseline expectation for the majority of people for where they need to be, right? So I don't know. I've had to rethink a lot of my thoughts on this. At what point is it ableist versus at what point is it your actual responsibility as a government to teach your citizens? And if you are not teaching them how to have comprehension skills, how to read text, how to do critical thinking, it is an intentional act of political oppression, right? So that's been something interesting for me to personally negotiate with my understanding of the world. Maybe some of you also have some idea of that as well. Antifa groupie, your cousin who's a teacher got doxxed by libs of TikTok as a pedophile because she had a pride flag in her classroom and she had to move schools. That's wild. I've been on libs of TikTok also. But that bad of a thing didn't happen to me. That's really, really bad. I'm really, really sorry. Yeah. Okay. So fun things for us to think about. Right? A lot going on in the world. Let's get into the map. We got to do Cambodia, chat. We got to do Cambodia today. It's going to be a big one. The map. Oh no, Virgo has to go. Oh, something happens. Uh-oh. Virgo, are you streaming today or are we sending everybody to Larry? Boba Mira, thank you. That's a good rock. Thank you. To Larry? Okay, cool. Thank you for everything, Virgo. Also, remember, everybody, if you want to have questions for No Doll, we will be interviewing members of the Korean Liberation Group here on Twitch live on the 24th. We'll be doing like a Zoom call with them. So get your questions in, and we'll take a stack and we'll ask some of them, to them. It'll be good. I think it'll be really nice. Yeah. So, all right. Thank you for everything, Virgo. Let's get into map. Chat who stays for map. Chat who map. Let's go. Boop, 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 boop. All right. Go to our little bookmarkies for map. I'm looking. Okay, no, not that one. Where is my NATO Super Friends group? I can't imagine Cambodia is on there. They're not. Okay, good. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything with the NATO Super Friends group. Officially joining Discord today. Yay. Okay. Hello, Big Agathy. Welcome. We're talking about Cambodia. And you've picked a good time. We're looking at the hyper-imperialism document to search for Cambodia. So if you're tired of apolitical video game streamers, we're the opposite of that. We have no fun, only politic. Just kidding. Holiday in Cambodia, everybody. Cue the song. Cue the track. Okay. So Cambodia does have, obviously, extreme military intervention and currently has one U.S. military base. They did not vote on the Gaza ceasefire. They are in the Friends of UN Charter, and they voted yes on the Russia withdrawal. All right. China has established one actual operating overseas military base on the Horn of Africa in Djibouti and is probably establishing a naval facility in Cambodia. That's what we got in the hyper-imperialism document today. Okay. I think Jello would like the map too, maybe. You know, he's funny. When I lived in San Francisco, he used to judge dance contests around the Mission District, and that was always really funny. What do we got going on over here? Okay, so political prisoner populations. This is the National Endowment for Democracy's 2025 spending, as shared with us by Malrish. Now, what this is, for anybody who doesn't know, National Endowment for Democracy is an NGO started by the CIA to do a lot of information kind of control and propaganda that the CIA used to do covertly. Now they could do it overtly. And because it was an NGO, it wasn't technically the U.S. government, even though it is funded 100% by Congress. They're able to move with more leeway in other countries without sparking diplomatic incidents. So this is their spending report from 2025. So this is basically what does the U.S. government want to spend money on, trying to change people's minds on around the world. Where is this? I'm trying to make it big enough for you guys to see. Okay. Why can't I find it? I just lost it. Chat. I just lost it. Hold on. I'm struggling today. I'm struggling every day. You guys are very patient with me. So I guess the only thing they're really referencing here is the color-coded map of how much they filled in here. So they're spending less than $1 million there, but they are spending money there in Cambodia. So that's the first thing we see. And over here we have the exact amount, $410,000. So it's kind of low, but they're still investing. So they're still putting money into it. Interesting to note. Let's see what kinds of things they're putting money into. Defending press freedom and independent media, improving access to independent news and information, strengthening the capacity of youth activists to promote democracy, supporting independent media and investigative journalism, and supporting independent journalism media, again, supporting youth participation in political processes, and supporting activist capacity and movement building. So, all right. My guess would be this. My guess is that, look, we did most of our damage there in the past, and there's some political opposition groups operating there today, but they don't have a super firm footing. So the United States is spending like maintenance money, right? Like we're maintaining, like, hey, remember, you don't want to do anything that would be bad for U.S. business. Don't look over there. So they're continuing to fund propaganda campaigns in favor of Western interests, and also fund political campaigns with politicians that will back Western interests there, but at a lower kind of rate. They feel like probably they have a semi-comfortable hold, but not to set it and forget it completely, right? Cambodian rainforests are losing their literal rain to rubber production. Wow, very, very, very shocking and bad. So, okay, this is what I'm going to guess. So let's take a look at what's going on with Cambodia in the news with all of the usual players. Let's see what's up with Cambodia and Iran, for example. And whoever said in the chat that they have a lot of U.S. or Western sweatshops there, Yes, they do. They have a lot of Western sweatshops there. Yes. That is correct. Okay. We've got the news with Israel, what they have going on. Cuba aligns with Cambodia, Israel, Haiti, and others as tourism growth falls amid sanctions. Okay, no, that's just talking about that's not actually uniting. That's just low tourism numbers shared across all of them. Trump nominated for 2026 Nobel Peace Prize with support from Cambodia, Israel, and Pakistan. Okay, all right. So that was from 2 months ago. So very obviously they're pretty compromised, as we will say, right? Vietnam does the finishing work on Western clothing made in Cambodia. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that part, actually. Russia's defense offer comes with costs Cambodia cannot ignore. Cambodia reaffirms Russia ties. 70 years of diplomatic growth. Okay, that's not that interesting. This is a Cambodian website, news source, but we don't know who's funding it or anything like that. Russia remains one of the world's largest arms exports, and Russia is ready to help strengthen Cambodia's defense sector. So that's probably why we're spending maintenance money. We don't want Russia to come swoop them out from under our noses in terms of influence. Cambodia has maintained a remarkably consistent position on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, repeatedly supporting UN resolutions that affirm Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It has earned respect among countries that value international law and rules-based order. And very unpopular with Russia, obviously. Okay. So the question is then, what level of compromise are they? Are they, maxing, or are they just regular compromised? Are they using their country as like a military outpost for the USA? They have one military base there. Okay, it's not a lot of military base there, but Cambodian Prime Minister says Thailand is occupying territory after Trump brokered ceasefire. Is Cambodia pivoting to the United States by joining President Trump's Board of Peace? These are the questions. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet says Thai forces are occupying the Cambodian territory after fighting last year despite a peace accord brokered by U.S. President Donald Trump, and called on Thailand to allow a joint boundary commission to begin working on the disputed border. Western capital does run Cambodia's economy, so it's like, how compromised are they? Is it like a vassal state? Or is it a regular subjugation to empire? I feel like they're not fully a vassal state. Cambodia could not accept a violation of our sovereignty or territorial sovereignty. Okay. Cambodia is pivoting to the U.S. by joining President Trump. Binary U.S.-China framing obscures the layered and multi-directional character of Cambodia's current foreign policy. See, this is why I think that they're not like just a straight-up outpost. They're not a straight-up vassal state. I think there's a little bit of gray area with how they're doing trade deals in a way that might not be exactly how the U.S. would want, right? So Cambodian Prime Minister, this is from February, traveled to Washington to attend the first meeting of the Board of Peace. Their decision to participate in the initiative as a founding member has once again prompted speculation that they might be edging closer towards Washington. For a country often described as China's most reliable partner in Southeast Asia, even limited engagement with U.S.-associated platform is quickly interpreted as strategic realignment. Oh, that's interesting, actually. So most people view them as being very much a China strategic partner. The Board of Peace, though, is not a military alliance. It does not entail defense obligations. 3 interconnected factors help explain the move: geostrategic positioning. Cambodia's economic and strategic ties with China are deeply embedded and unlikely to be reversed. Beijing remains a major source of investment, financing trade. In the textile and garment sector, the backbone of Cambodia's export economy, production depends heavily on Chinese intermediary inputs and supply chains. The industry employs around 800,000 Cambodian workers, roughly 80% of whom are women. So basically they're saying that Cambodian sweatshops and regular factories as well, but there are sweatshops there, have to get stuff from China. Like, they're not fully vertically integrated within Cambodia. they have to go to China to import things. So they need to be able to do that in order to run this industry. Chinese capital is also involved in infrastructure development and construction. Tourism flows from China to Cambodia, and that provides national revenue. So there's not so much of a relationship that implies dominance of any kind. Or reversing course from China would therefore come with an economic cost. Engagement with U.S.-linked initiatives such as the Board of Peace broadens Cambodia's diplomatic bandwidth. Okay. Cambodia-China Free Trade Agreement entered into force in 2022 has further boosted bilateral trade, which exceeds $19 billion in 2025. Okay, so here's my assessment. My assessment is the United States does have a military base there. And they are, for whatever reason, backing Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. They're not fully in the pocket, though. They're still doing all the stuff with China that benefits their economy, and they can't be fully in the pocket. So I am going to mark them, I think, as compromised alongside Thailand, which is funny because they're both having conflict with each other, but, they can both be compromised in different ways. Does anybody have any arguments against this move before we wrap up today? Anyone? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Anybody? No? No? Is that it? We did it? Hydrate! We did it. Okay. All right. I'm marking it. I'm saving it. I'm saving the map, chat. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for a lovely first day back at stream. I can't wait to join you all tomorrow for another edition of Topics Tuesday. What was Poland renamed? I think they're still Poland. No, Evil Brat. We renamed Poland Evil Brat. We got a few more in there. Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So, stop feeling just so Poland. All right, I'm sending you all on a raid to Larry. I adore you all. In 2 days, I will know if I can afford my vacation for my birthday to China, chat. So if I'm able to go, you will get China streams. See? Come on, that's just rude. So that's the update. All right, sending you all. I've been trying very hard. I had a video go viral on TikTok. I'm like making money moves. I'm saving. We're trying. Okay. Rating now.